The image of the Victorian cabinetmaker is often painted in sepia strokes, a solitary artisan in a charmingly cluttered shop, creating beauty with effortless grace. But the true history of this life was not a painting. It was a physical discipline defined by the deep chill of the stone floor, the persistent ache in the thumbs from sustained pressure, and the sharp, pungent scent of hot animal glue that filled the small space. Welcome to the canvas, traveler. Tonight, we step past the spectacle of history to find the human texture within it. Here you will not just observe the world of a 19th century craftsman. You will feel the steady, guiding pressure of a sharpened steel blade against the unyielding grain of a difficult piece of wood, and the profound patience required to make it yield to a perfect, smooth surface. But before the journey continues, a brief pause belongs to the present moment, where simple gestures of support quietly sustain this space and leave small traces of connection across distance and time. These traces linger as attention begins to loosen its hold on the modern world. Screens, clocks, and obligations soften at the edges, their presence slowly fading into the margins of the night. The walls of the room grow thin, becoming transparent membranes of shadow and light. The modern quiet is replaced by an older, heavier silence, filled with the scent of sawdust and linseed oil. The body settles into this new stillness, the breath slowing to match the deliberate, patient rhythm of the past. The year is 1888, and the story begins inside the deep and penetrating chill of a London workshop. The air in the workshop is cold, a deep and penetrating chill that settles on the skin of the hands and face. A single gas lamp burns with a low, steady hiss, its yellow light pushing back against the pre-dawn gloom. The flame casts long, dancing shadows that make the stacked lumber in the corners seem to breathe. A deep inhalation draws in the familiar scent of old wood and cool, damp stone. You feel the rough texture of the timber under the fingertips. The planks are heavy, seasoned, and waiting. The scent of raw mahogany is sharp and clean, a dry perfume that promises structure and form. It is a smell of potential energy, of a future piece held dormant within the grain. The sound in the room is a profound silence, a quiet so deep it seems to have a physical weight. The hands close around the wooden handle of a heavy jack plane. The brass and steel are cold to the touch, a dense, metallic chill that seeps into the palms. The weight of the tool is comforting, a solid and known presence. Lifting it from the workbench requires a familiar engagement of the muscles in the arm and shoulder. The movement is slow, deliberate, and without any wasted effort. The tool is set upon a long plank of wood. The steel blade rests against the surface, a perfect, thin line of contact. A low, rhythmic rasp begins to fill the space, a shearing whisper that repeats in a steady cadence. Each forward pass sends a vibration from the wood, through the steel, and up into the bones of the arms. Thin, fragrant curls of wood fall to the floorboards. A weak morning light begins to filter through a tall, grimy window. It illuminates a slow, silent ballet of sawdust particles, suspended and swirling in the pale beam. The rest of the workshop remains in a comfortable darkness, a world of shapes defined by shadow and suggestion. The eyes, long adjusted to the gloom, pick out the details of the tools hanging from the walls in their precise order. You notice the floor is a landscape of its own. Drifts of pale sawdust and wood shavings have collected around the legs of the workbench, soft as fresh snow. The old floorboards are uneven and dark with the stains of spilled oil and glue from generations of work. The slight give of the boards underfoot is a familiar sensation, a solid foundation for the hours of standing that are to come. The air itself feels thick, heavy, with the dust of the work. It carries a complex mixture of scents: the sweetness of beeswax, the sharp tang of linseed oil, and the faint, metallic smell of cooling iron from the nearby stove. Each breath is a reminder of the materials, a constant immersion in the physical reality of the craft. The atmosphere is dense, insulating the space from the world outside. The surface of the main workbench is a testament to countless hours of labor. It is a geography of small cuts, dark rings from glue pots, and the deep scars of slipped tools. The hands glide over the surface, feeling the smooth, worn patches and the rough, newer marks. This heavy oak slab is the center of the world, a place of transformation where raw material becomes refined form. A heavy block of beeswax sits on a corner of the bench. Its surface is smooth and cool, with a faint, waxy tackiness. The scent is subtle but persistent, a sweet and organic counterpoint to the sharper smells of cut wood and metal. Running a thumb across, it leaves a slight, polished sheen on the skin. It is a material of preservation, of finishing, of sealing the work against time. The only sound now is the quiet settling of the building. A faint creak of a ceiling beam, the low hum of the city beginning to wake, felt more as a tremor through the soles of the feet than heard with the ears. This container of wood and brick holds a stillness that is earned. It is a silence built from focus, a quiet space carved out for the slow and patient unfolding of the work ahead. The day begins not with a clock, but with a quality of light. The same pale beam from the high window creeps across the floor, signaling the time to begin the true work. A long, wide plank of oak is lifted from the stack and carried to the workbench. The weight is considerable, a dense and solid burden that requires the engagement of the entire body to move with care. The plank is placed onto the flat surface of the bench and secured. The heavy iron handle of the vise is turned, its greased threads groaning softly with the pressure. The wooden jaws close with a solid, final sound, gripping the timber and making it one with the bench. A firm push confirms the hold. The wood is now an extension of the unmoving foundation, ready for the tool. The first pass of the plane is always a test. It is a long, smooth stroke, driven by the legs and the core, not just the arms. The blade, sharpened to a perfect edge, slices into the surface with a low hiss. A translucent shaving, thin as paper, peels away from the wood. You feel the grain's direction, a subtle current running through the tool and into the hands. A steady rhythm is quickly established. It is a physical pulse that fills the workshop. A forward push with a shearing sound, a quiet lift, a silent return. The body sways with the motion, a slow and repetitive dance of pressure and release. The air fills with the constant, whispery rasp of steel on wood, a sound more meditative than disruptive. The mind empties, focusing only on the pressure of the blade. Pale ribbons of oak begin to accumulate on the floor. They curl into delicate spirals, their fresh-cut surfaces gleaming in the lamplight. The scent in the room intensifies, a rich, earthy perfume of opened oak that is sharp and almost sweet. The shavings pile up around the feet, a soft and fragrant tide that marks the passage of time and the slow removal of material. Then the rhythm is broken. The plane's easy glide meets a sudden, unyielding resistance. The blade chatters and skips, the sound changing from a smooth whisper to a harsh, stuttering scrape. The forward momentum is stopped, and a jarring vibration travels up the arms. You notice a dark, swirling pattern in the wood, a knot, dense and rebellious, disrupting the straight and orderly grain. This is the central hardship of the work. The grain of the wood, for all its beauty, does not always yield easily. It contains these points of dense, twisted history, places where the tree has healed or a branch has grown. These knots are not flaws to be discarded, but challenges to be understood and navigated. They are an unavoidable fact of the material itself. The approach must change. The long, smooth strokes are replaced by shorter, more careful passes. The angle of the plane is adjusted, coming at the dense island of wood from a different direction. It is a process of negotiation, not of force. The blade must be coaxed across the difficult terrain, shaving away infinitesimally small layers without tearing the surrounding fibers. You feel the muscles in the back and shoulders tighten with the increased effort. Each pass over the knot requires immense control, a focused pressure to keep the blade from digging in or skittering across the surface. The feedback from the tool is immediate and unforgiving. The wood dictates the terms of the engagement, and patience becomes the most important tool in the workshop. A fine sweat begins to bead on the forehead. The work is slow and methodical, a battle of attrition against the stubbornness of the material. There is no anger, only a deep and abiding focus. The entire world shrinks to the few square inches of swirling grain and the thin steel edge that is meant to tame it. The city outside, with all its noise, fades to nothing. After many careful passes, a change occurs. The harsh scraping sound begins to soften, returning to the familiar whisper. The plane glides over the area where the knot resides, and the surface is now smooth to the touch. The rebellious grain has been brought into alignment with the rest of the board. The challenge has been met, and the rhythm of the work can resume its steady, meditative pace. The long steel straightedge is lifted from its place on the wall. Its milled edge is flawless, a line of perfect truth in a world of organic curves. The metal is cool and heavy, a tool of judgment. It is placed gently upon the newly planed surface of the oak board, the weight settling with a quiet, metallic finality. This is the first and most important test of the work. The eye is brought down to the level of the bench to look along the seam where steel meets wood. The rule is absolute. No light must pass beneath the edge. Not a glimmer, not a thin sliver. A dark line of perfect, unbroken contact is the only acceptable result. Anything less means the work must begin again, the surface shaved down with the plane until it is truly flat. The wood itself is a silent partner in this order. It lives and breathes, expanding in the damp air and shrinking in the dry. You notice the grain must always be worked in its natural direction. To move against this current is to invite ruin, to cause the fibers to tear and splinter. This is not a choice, but a fundamental law of the material that cannot be ignored or defied. This same unyielding precision governs the joining of two pieces. A dovetail joint is not merely cut, it is engineered to a tolerance of a hair's breadth. The pins and the tails must slide together with only firm, steady pressure from the hands. The fit must be so exact that it holds by friction alone, a silent, powerful bond designed to endure for a century or more. A moment of inattention or a slight tremor of the hand carries an immediate consequence. A sharp splitting sound can echo in the quiet workshop as a piece of wood gives way. The timber is now useless, its integrity broken. There is no external judgment, only the quiet finality of wasted material and the necessity of starting the process from the very beginning. The standard is unforgiving. The tools demand their own strict discipline. A chisel blade must be honed until it can shave the fine hairs from the back of the arm. The teeth of a handsaw must be perfectly set. each one at an identical angle to its neighbor. A tool that is not maintained in a state of perfection cannot be expected to produce perfect work. The quality of the edge reflects the maker's discipline. This standard is not a new invention. You feel it in the weight of the old tools, their wooden handles shaped and darkened by hands long gone. It is present in the very design of the workbench, a form that has not changed in centuries. It is an unseen inheritance, a silent pressure from every cabinet maker who has ever worked wood to this same level of exactness. Even the final application of the finish is governed by these unspoken laws. The linseed oil is warmed to a specific temperature, applied with a clean linen cloth in a continuous, circular motion. The surface must be built up in thin, patient layers over the course of many days. A single speck of dust trapped in the finish is a failure. The goal is a deep, clear glow from within. The body learns these rules until they become instinct. The muscles know the precise force needed to drive a chisel through oak. The shoulders understand the angle required for a perfect cut. You feel the laws of the work settling deep into the physical self, a knowledge that operates without conscious thought. The hands move with an economy and certainty born of countless hours. There is no escape from this silent, governing force. It is in the wood, in the tools, and in the very air of the workshop, but it is not a thing to be feared. It is a guide, a framework that gives the work its meaning and its permanence. To meet the standard is to create something true, something that will stand firm against the slow, steady pressure of time. A change arrives not as a sound, but as an obstruction. At dawn, a large, square crate stands before the workshop door. It is constructed of rough, raw pine, bound with iron straps, and sealed against the damp morning air. No cart or deliveryman is present, the object simply is. Its sudden, silent appearance on the familiar cobblestones is a message in itself, a solid and unavoidable demand. The effort to move the crate across the threshold is immense. Using an iron bar as a lever, the heavy box is slowly worked into the space, its rough bottom scraping loudly against the stone. The muscles of the back and legs strain against the inert weight. Once inside, it dominates the small workshop, a pale, geometric intruder in a world of aged, dark wood. A heavy mallet and a flat pry bar are used to open the lid. The iron straps are pried loose with a sharp, metallic groan. The nails holding the top in place resist, then pull free with a high-pitched, splintering shriek. The sound is loud in the quiet room. With the lid removed, a scent of dry, clean wood shavings and something else, something foreign and aromatic, rises from within. Packed carefully in the pale wood shavings is a large portfolio. It is bound in dark green leather, smooth and cool to the touch, and held shut by a simple leather tie. There are no markings on its surface. The object possesses a quiet authority, its quality speaking of a serious purpose. It is lifted from the crate, its weight substantial and balanced, a container of important information. The leather tie is unknotted, and the portfolio is opened on the workbench. Inside are several large sheets of heavy, stiff paper, rolled and tied with a silk ribbon. The paper is thick and textured, of a quality rarely seen. You feel the crispness of its edges, a sign of its expense and the gravity of the message it carries. The ribbon is untied, and the first sheet is carefully unrolled. The paper unfurls with a dry, rustling sound, revealing a detailed architectural drawing rendered in fine black ink. It depicts a writing desk of extraordinary complexity. The design shows a multitude of small drawers, slender, curved legs, and a surface intended for intricate inlay work. Every line is precise, every measurement documented with a cold, clear exactitude. The image is not a suggestion, it is a declaration. The eye follows the complex lines, tracing the path of the intended joinery. The design calls for techniques that require the highest level of skill and a deep understanding of the wood's nature. There are hidden compartments, delicate carvings, and forms that challenge the material's limits. The drawing is a silent gauntlet, a challenge laid down in ink on paper, demanding a perfect execution. Deeper within the crate, nestled in the shavings, is a small, dense block of wood. It is darker than walnut, with a swirling grain that seems to shift in the light. The surface is polished to a high sheen, cool and smooth as stone. This is the specified material, an exotic timber that is notoriously difficult to work. Its presence is an underscore to the drawing's demands for precision. Beside the block of wood rests a single, heavy envelope made from the same thick paper as the drawings. It is sealed not with glue, but with a large, perfect circle of dark blue wax, impressed with an intricate crest. The document is not opened. Its sealed state is its message, a bond of trust, a formal commission given and accepted in silence. The atmosphere in the workshop has shifted. The familiar space, once a sanctuary of quiet routine, now feels charged with a new, focused energy. The tools hanging in their orderly rows on the wall seem to possess a greater potential. The commission sits on the workbench, a silent, unblinking eye, demanding a level of work that will test the very limits of the craft. The next morning, the approach to the workshop feels different. The usual sounds of the London street, the distant rumble of iron-shod wheels, the calls of vendors seem to exist in another world, separated by an invisible barrier. The heavy wooden door of the shop is a clear demarcation point. To pass through, it is to leave the chaos of the city behind and enter a realm of focused, singular purpose. The large iron key is fitted into the lock. Its movement is stiff and loud, a series of heavy, metallic clicks that echo in the quiet alley. The door swings inward with a low groan of old hinges, revealing the familiar gloom within. The air that flows out is cool and smells of sawdust and old stone, a scent that immediately quiets the mind and prepares it for the work. The first act upon entering is always the same. A heavy wooden bar is lifted and settled into thick iron brackets, securing the door against the outside world. The sound of the bar falling into place is a deep, resonant thud, a signal that the day's work has truly begun. You feel the vibration through the floorboards, a final, solid closing of the boundary between the workshop and everything else. A specific order is followed. The shutters over the tall windows are unlatched and pushed open, allowing the pale, indirect light of the morning to fill the space. The light is soft and gray, ideal for seeing the subtle variations in wood grain and for judging the flatness of a surface. It is a working light, clear and honest, without the harshness of direct sun. Next, the lamp on the workbench is lit. A match is struck, its sharp, sulfurous scent briefly cutting through the workshop's familiar smells. The wick catches, and a steady, golden flame rises within the glass chimney. The warm light creates a focused pool of illumination on the scarred oak surface, highlighting the drawings and the block of exotic timber from the crate. This light defines the immediate arena of action. A heavy leather apron is taken from a hook on the wall. The material is thick and stiff, darkened with age and stained with oil and glue. It is a piece of functional armor, designed to protect from splinters and sharp edges. The apron is tied securely, its weight a familiar pressure on the shoulders, and a physical reminder of the transition into a state of work. The hands are then washed in a basin of cold water. A coarse bar of soap is used to scrub away any grime from the outside world, cleaning the skin and under the nails with methodical care. The cold water is a shock to the system, heightening awareness and bringing a sharp focus to the sensations in the fingertips. The hands must be perfectly clean. Any oil or dirt could stain the delicate wood. The tools are inspected. A thumb is run gently over the sharpened edge of a chisel, testing its keenness. The set of a saw's teeth is checked by eye, ensuring its readiness. Each tool is a silent partner, and its condition is paramount. This quiet, tactile conversation with the steel and wood of the tools is a centering ritual, a final preparation of the instruments before they are called upon. You notice the sounds of the workshop itself begin to emerge into the silence. The low hiss of the gas lamp, the almost inaudible creak of the building settling, the soft whisper of a draft moving through the high rafters. These are the true sounds of the space, a quiet, constant symphony that replaces the noise of the city. The mind attunes to this new, subtle soundscape. With all preparations complete, a moment of stillness is taken before the workbench. The drawings are unrolled again, their precise lines a silent set of instructions. The block of rare wood sits beside them, its dark grain holding both promise and challenge. The world has been reduced to this single, focused point: the plan, the material, and the hands that will bring them together. The work can now begin. The workshop is more than a room, it is a container of time. The air is thick with the accumulated dust of decades, each fine particle a remnant of a past project, a ghost of cedar, oak, or pine. You feel this history as a palpable presence, a stillness that absorbs sound and encourages slow, deliberate movement. The silence is not empty, but full of a deep, resonant quiet. The walls serve as a silent library of steel and wood. The tools hang in an order established long ago, a logic that has become instinct. Chisels are arranged by width, their sharpened edges gleaming with a thin film of oil. Handsaws are nested by the fineness of their teeth. This perfect organization is a form of knowledge in itself, a physical map of the craft passed down without a single documented word. You notice a history in the floorboards beneath the feet. A subtle depression in the wood marks the spot where a master stood for 40 years. The boards worn into a shallow basin by the slight, repetitive shifts of a body at work. To stand in that same place is to feel a connection to that unwavering focus, a physical echo of a lifetime of dedication. The scent is a complex layering of years. The dominant notes are of beeswax and linseed oil, a sweet and earthy perfume that has soaked deep into the wood of the building itself. Beneath that is the faint, metallic tang of cold steel and the dry, ancient smell of glue, slowly warmed by the heat from the small stove. It is the aroma of preservation and construction. On a high shelf, untouched by the daily clutter, rests a single object, a mallet carved from a single piece of dark, polished fruitwood. It is too beautiful for practical use, its balance perfect, its surface flawless. It is not a tool but a standard, a physical representation of the absolute perfection the work demands, left by a predecessor as a silent measure. The handle of a frequently used hand drill is worn smooth, its wooden grip shaped not by design, but by the pressure of a specific hand over thousands of rotations. To close the fingers around it is to feel that same grip, to align the knuckles with the impressions left in the wood. The tool itself seems to guide the movement, a quiet inheritance of technique. The light from the high window does not simply illuminate the space, it selects what is important. It falls directly onto the main workbench, making the grain of the wood stand out in sharp relief. The corners of the workshop remain in a reverent darkness, a soft gloom that holds the memory of finished pieces and the raw lumber that is yet to be transformed. This atmosphere of deep tradition is not a burden. It is a foundation. The weight of the past provides a sense of stability, a connection to a long line of skill and effort. It demands a quiet humility and a deep respect for the materials and the process. There is a profound comfort in being a small part of this continuous, unbroken line of craft. You feel this presence as a steady, guiding pressure. It is in the perfect balance of a plane, the unwavering line of a straight edge, and the profound silence that allows for absolute concentration. The standard to be met is not personal. It is the standard of the workshop itself, a silent, unyielding expectation that has existed for generations and will continue long after. The new drawings for the complex desk, spread across the bench in the focused lamplight, seem to settle into this history. The task ahead is not a solitary effort, but a conversation with every artisan who has worked in this space. The challenge is clear: to add to the legacy of this room, to meet its silent, heavy standard of excellence. The core of the craft is not found in speed, but in a profound and unwavering patience. This is the central code, the unspoken principle that governs every action within the workshop walls. It is a form of endurance that is both mental and physical, a deep well of stillness from which all precise work is drawn. The wood itself, with its slow growth and stubborn grain, is the greatest teacher of this virtue. This code is demonstrated not through words, but through the grain of the timber. The exotic block for the commission is placed on the bench. Its surface is dark and wild, with a grain that shifts and turns back on itself. To rush this material would be to destroy it. The first lesson is simply to look, to spend time observing the lines and predicting the wood's internal tensions. A heavy smoothing plane is selected. Before it touches the timber, the blade is removed and inspected. The edge is tested against a sliver of softer wood, ensuring a perfect, clean cut. The blade is then honed on a leather strop, a repetitive back-and-forth motion that polishes the steel to a mirror finish. The preparation of the tool is an act of patience in itself, a ritual of respect for the material. The plane is set for an incredibly fine cut. The blade is adjusted so that it protrudes only a hair's breadth from the sole. The shavings it produces should be translucent, almost insubstantial. This is not about removing material quickly, but about refining a surface with the utmost control. Each pass is a whisper, not a shout, a slow and deliberate caress of the surface. The first strokes are taken at a skewed angle, moving diagonally across the grain. This technique prevents the blade from catching and tearing the interlocking fibers of the difficult wood. You feel the resistance of the timber through the tool, a subtle vibration that communicates the wood's internal structure. The plane becomes an extension of the hands, a sensory instrument for reading the material. When a difficult patch of swirling grain is encountered, the work pauses. The direction of the plane is reversed. The tool is now pulled, not pushed, a subtle shift that changes how the blade engages with the wood fibers. The motion is slow, almost meditative, shaving away infinitesimal amounts with each pass. The code demands that the method must adapt to the material, not the other way around. The results are not measured in minutes or hours, but in the quality of the surface. After a long period of this careful work, the hand is swept across the wood. The goal is a surface that feels like cool silk, with no perceptible roughness or imperfection. You notice the light reflecting from the timber in an unbroken sheet, a sign that the surface is truly flat and smooth. This same patience is required for the joinery. The lines for a dovetail joint are not simply drawn, they are scored into the wood with a sharp marking knife. This creates a precise channel for the saw to follow, ensuring a perfect cut. The knife is guided by a steel square, its edge pressed firmly against the wood. The pressure is steady, the line incised with a single, confident stroke. The cutting of the joint is done with a fine-toothed back saw. The saw moves with a slow, steady rhythm, the body held still to ensure the cut is perfectly vertical. The focus is not on the saw itself, but on the scribed line. The saw's teeth are placed just to the waist side of the line, preserving its integrity. Each stroke is a conscious, deliberate action. The waste material between the tails is removed with a chisel and mallet. The chisel is placed in the scored line, its blade perfectly upright. A single, controlled tap from the mallet drives the edge into the wood. The process is repeated, slowly deepening the cut until the waste can be removed in a clean block. There is no haste, only a methodical and patient removal of what is not needed. You feel the deep concentration required for this work. The breathing slows, the body settles, and the mind becomes completely absorbed in the task. All awareness of the outside world fades. There is only the tool, the wood, and the unwavering line. This is the state of mind that patience builds, a sanctuary of focus where precision becomes possible. Ultimately, this code of endurance is about respect. It is a respect for the centuries the tree took to grow, for the inherent beauty of the material, and for the craft itself. To rush is to show disrespect. To be patient is to honor the entire process, from the living tree to the finished piece. This silent, unyielding patience is the true secret held within the workshop walls. The workshop is a world unto itself, a self-contained vessel of wood and brick. Its four walls are lined with tall, dark racks of seasoned timber, a dense library of potential. The stacked planks absorb sound, creating a heavy, insulated silence. You feel this quiet as a physical presence, a buffer that separates this small room from the sprawling, noisy city that surrounds it. This is a sanctuary built for focus. The only connection to the outside is the single, tall window. It is set high in the wall, its glass clouded with the grime of years, preventing any clear view of the world beyond. It does not offer a landscape, only light. The pale northern light it admits is constant and diffuse, a perfect, shadowless illumination for the precise work of the hands. The window is a tool, not an escape. The floor is made of thick, old planks, worn smooth in some places and deeply scarred in others. The wood is dark and solid underfoot, a stable foundation that does not creak or shift. The faint, sweet smell of sawdust rises from the gaps between the boards. The entire world has been reduced to what can be seen and touched within these four walls, a deliberate exclusion of all distractions. The heart of this space is the workbench. It is a massive block of oak, its top thicker than a person's wrist, its legs like stout pillars. Its surface is a map of past labors, a constellation of nicks, cuts, and dark stains. You notice its immense weight makes it an immovable anchor in the center of the room. All work, all thought, all effort revolves around this solid, unyielding altar of craft. This small, enclosed world is a place of profound safety. Here, the only demands are those of the wood and the tools. The chaos and unpredictability of the outside world cannot penetrate the thick door. Within these walls, there is a clear and understandable order. A straight line is true, a sharp blade is effective, and patience is always rewarded. It is a refuge of pure, logical process. Yet, this sanctuary is also a cage. The same thick walls that keep the world out also hold the body in. The hours stretch into an unbroken continuum of work, marked only by the slow crawl of light across the floor. The muscles in the back and legs grow stiff from standing in one position. The focus required by the work builds a fence around the mind, excluding all other thoughts. The air, so rich with the scent of wood and oil, becomes the only air that is breathed. The constant presence of fine sawdust coats the back of the throat. You feel a deep, physical fatigue begin to settle deep in the bones, a weariness born of repetitive motion and unrelenting concentration. The workshop provides everything needed for the work, but it demands the complete surrender of the self to its confines. The commission, with its intricate drawings and demanding material, reinforces this confinement. The complexity of the design requires an unbroken chain of thought and action. To leave the workshop is to risk breaking this fragile thread of concentration. And so the door remains barred, the outside world held at bay not by force, but by the gravitational pull of the work itself. The sanctuary protects the work, but the cage consumes the hours. The sun rises and sets beyond the grimy window, unseen. Meals are simple affairs taken at the corner of the bench, a brief pause in the steady rhythm of planing and cutting. The world outside becomes a distant memory, a rumor of motion and noise that has no place in this temple of stillness. The wall of the workshop does not hold mere objects. It holds a silent, hanging library of potential actions. The tools are arranged in a precise hierarchy, each one a specific answer to a question the wood might ask. They do not appear as separate entities, but as dormant parts of the body, waiting to be reattached. A heavy stillness surrounds them, a quiet accumulation of the thousands of hours they have spent in motion. The first to be lifted from the rack is a paring chisel. Its handle is turned from octagonal boxwood, a dense and pale timber that has darkened to a rich amber color from years of contact with the palm. The facets of the handle are worn smooth, the sharp edges softened by the friction of skin against wood. It is warm to the touch, holding a residual heat that seems to belong to the tool itself. You feel the balance of the steel blade as it extends from the brass ferrule. The metal is cool, a stark contrast to the organic warmth of the handle. The back of the blade has been flattened to a perfect plane, polished until it reflects the dust motes dancing in the air. This tool is not held with force. It rests in the hand with a lightness that belies its cutting power. When the edge meets the wood, the sensation is not one of impact, but of separation. The steel slides beneath a thin layer of timber, parting the fibers with a quiet, crisp sound. The sensation travels up the steel, through the handle, and into the wrist. It is a direct line of communication. The hand does not push the tool. The intention flows through the steel, and the wood yields. Next, the hands find the heavy smoothing plane. This is a tool of significant mass, a block of cast iron and rosewood designed to flatten the world. The rear handle, the tote, is shaped to fit the curve of a specific grip. The wood here is dark, almost black, polished by the natural oils of the skin to a glass-like finish. It fits into the palm with a pop of suction, locking the hand into place. The weight of the plane anchors the body to the bench. It requires a different engagement, a power drawn from the legs and the lower back. As the plane is pushed forward, the sole glides over the timber. You notice the friction as a drag that quickly turns into a slide. The blade engages, and a long, continuous shaving rises through the throat of the tool, curling over the hand like a ribbon of stiff silk. The sound is a signature of the process. It is a high, singing whisper, the sound of a perfectly sharp wedge shearing through organic material. The vibration is constant and smooth, a hum that resonates in the elbows and shoulders. The plane does not feel like a heavy weight anymore. It feels like a weighted extension of the arm, a heavy hand that smooths whatever it touches. Hanging apart from the others is the backsaw. Its handle is an open loop of beech, stained dark and shaped with a prominent horn to hook the thumb. The brass spine along the top of the blade adds a rigid weight, keeping the thin steel plate perfectly straight. To hold it is to feel a desire for alignment, the tool naturally settling into a vertical plane. The teeth of the saw are small and sharp, set in a precise row. When drawn across the wood, they do not slice, they sever. The sound is a rhythmic rasp, a heartbeat of friction. The sawdust produced is fine and granular, dusting the back of the hand. The saw tracks true, guided not just by the eye, but by the feedback of the teeth in the kerf, a vibration that tells the hand if the cut is drifting. Maintenance of these extensions is a ritual in itself. A heavy slate stone sits in a bath of oil. The smell is mineral and sharp. The chisel blade is placed upon the stone, the bevel finding its angle by muscle memory alone. The steel is moved in slow, figure-eight patterns. The sound is a wet, grinding slush as the stone wears away microscopic particles of metal. A gray slurry of oil and steel forms on the stone's surface. This paste is the evidence of the sharpening, the physical residue of the edge being renewed. The fingertip is brushed lightly across the back of the blade to feel for the wire edge, a tiny burr of metal that signals sharpness. It is a tactile confirmation that the tool is once again ready to sever the fibers of the wood without tearing. In the height of the work, the boundary between the flesh and the tool dissolves. The handle of the chisel is no longer felt as a separate object. The nerve endings seem to extend to the very tip of the steel edge. The mind does not command the hand to move the tool. The mind simply commands the wood to part, and the instrument obeys. The wear on the tools is a map of this union. The depression in the plane's knob where the thumb rests, the darkening of the chisel handle, the polish on the saw's grip, these are not damages. They are the physical record of the thousands of times the tool has become part of the body. They are the interface where the man ends and the craft begins. The days no longer follow the rhythm of the sun, but the logic of the commission. The work begins in the deep, silent darkness before dawn and ends long after the last light has faded from the high window. Time is now measured not in hours, but in completed tasks. A set of legs shaped, a drawer dovetailed, a surface smoothed. The old, steady pace has been replaced by a current of focused urgency. The first task of each day is the sharpening of the tools. This is a quiet, meditative ritual performed in the cold morning air. The steel of the plain iron is worked against the oil stone, the rhythmic, circular motion a way of gathering focus. The sound is a low, abrasive whisper. You feel the keenness of the edge with the pad of the thumb, a silent confirmation that the day's work can begin. Sustenance is a simple, practical matter. A loaf of dark, heavy bread and a block of hard cheese sit on a small, clean cloth at the end of the workbench. There are no formal meals. Instead, small pieces are broken off and eaten with the hands when a pause is required, such as waiting for a pot of glue to heat. The taste is strong and salty, a dense fuel for the body. The act of eating is brief and mechanical. The focus remains on the drawings, the eye tracing the complex joinery even while chewing. The hands, though holding food, are never far from the wood. You notice the fine, aromatic dust of the exotic timber has settled on the bread, adding a faint, bitter taste. The work is consumed along with the meal, a constant presence. Water is drunk from a simple tin cup. It is cool and tastes faintly of metal, a clean, sharp sensation that cuts through the dust in the throat. The cup is refilled from a large clay jug that sits in the coolest corner of the workshop. The act of drinking is a momentary pause, a brief return to the basic needs of the body before the mind is once again submerged in the work. The central part of the day is a long, unbroken stretch of intense concentration. The workshop fills with the steady, repetitive sounds of the craft. The crisp tap of the mallet on a chisel, the high whisper of the smoothing plane, the rhythmic rasp of the saw. These sounds become a kind of breathing, a pulse that drives the hours forward in a seamless flow. As the light from the window begins to fail, the gas lamp is lit. The hiss of the flame is a signal that the day is transitioning into its final phase. The warm, yellow light creates a small island of intense focus on the workbench, while the rest of the workshop recedes into deep shadow. The world shrinks to the size of the task at hand. The last act of the evening is to prepare the glue. A small, iron pot containing dark cakes of animal hide glue is placed over a low flame. The scent is thick and pungent, a heavy, organic smell that fills the small space. The glue melts slowly into a thick, amber liquid. This preparation is for the next day's work, a forward-looking ritual that ensures there will be no delay. Before leaving, the workspace is cleaned. The wood shavings are swept into a neat pile. The tools are wiped with an oily rag and returned to their proper places on the wall. The drawings are rolled and tied. This restoration of order is a necessary closing to the day, a resetting of the sanctuary for the efforts of the morrow. The work is left in a state of quiet readiness. The work now enters a new phase, a period of slow and meticulous transformation. The raw planks of dark, exotic timber must be converted into perfectly dimensioned, interlocking components. This is a process with no shortcuts, a methodical ritual where each step builds upon the flawless execution of the last. The drawings are consulted, their clean lines a stark contrast to the rough, organic state of the wood. The first decision is the most critical, the selection of the grain. The eye scans the wide surface of a plank, reading the story of the tree. The straightest, most stable grain is chosen for the slender legs of the desk. A section with a wild, swirling figure is set aside for the main top surface. This is a silent conversation, an act of seeing the finished piece within the raw material. A large frame saw is lifted from the wall. Its coarse teeth are designed for power, not finesse. The heavy plank is placed on trestles, and the cut begins. A low, tearing sound fills the workshop as the blade severs the wood fibers. The muscles in the shoulder and back engage in a steady, rocking rhythm. The result is not a clean edge, but a rough, splintered surface, a component brought to its approximate size. Now, the true work of refinement starts. An oversized piece is clamped to the bench. The heavy jack plane is used to create the first true surface, a process known as facing. Long, overlapping strokes remove the high spots, the blade singing as it shaves the wood. The steel straight edge is laid across the surface repeatedly, a silent judge, until not a single sliver of light can pass beneath it. With one flat face established, a perfect edge must be created, square to the first. A heavy iron tri-square is pressed firmly against the finished face, its steel blade hanging down the edge. The plane is used again, this time on the narrow side, until the wood of the edge is perfectly flush with the square's blade along its entire length. These first two surfaces become the reference for all other dimensions. The marking gauge, a tool of brass and rosewood with a single sharp steel pin, is set to the final desired thickness. Holding the tool's head firmly against the flat reference face, a thin, crisp line is scribed around all four edges of the board. This is not a pencil mark that can be erased. It is a physical boundary, a delicate incision that defines the absolute limit of the material to be removed. The final planing is a delicate act of approaching this scribed line without ever crossing it. The plane is set for a finer cut. The shavings become lighter, thinner, almost translucent. The last few strokes are taken with immense care. You feel the blade cut right to the bottom of the scribed line, the wood parting with a final, satisfying whisper. The raw plank is now a perfect, geometric block. Meanwhile, on the small stove, the glue pot heats. It is a double boiler. The inner pot containing the dark, amber cakes of hide glue is suspended in an outer pot of hot water. This gentle, indirect heat is essential. The glue must be brought to a precise temperature, hot enough to flow like warm honey, but not so hot that its strength is compromised. The scent, thick and deeply organic, fills the air. A wooden stick is used to stir the melting glue, ensuring a smooth, consistent texture. You notice the liquid coats the stick in a thin, even film. It is a material that demands constant attention. If it cools, it will congeal. If it boils, it is ruined. Its readiness must be perfectly timed with the completion of the joinery. Finally, the long iron clamps are laid out on the floor in a neat row. Their heavy screws are turned, the metal groaning softly as the jaws are opened wide. Small, protective blocks of scrap wood, called cauls, are placed beside them. These will distribute the immense pressure of the clamps evenly, preventing the delicate surfaces from being marred. Every element is now prepared for the moment of assembly. The components of the first drawer lie arranged on the workbench. 4 pieces of perfectly dimensioned wood, their ends cut with the intricate geometry of dovetails. They are a testament to hours of precise, patient work, but they are not yet a whole. They exist in a state of pure potential, a puzzle whose pieces have been crafted for a single, perfect assembly. The air in the workshop grows still. A brush is dipped into the pot of hot, amber-colored glue. The liquid is thick and warm, clinging to the bristles. The scent, which has been a background note for hours, now comes to the forefront, a heavy, pungent aroma of hide and heat. You feel the weight of the brush, the slight drag of the viscous liquid as it is lifted from the pot, a single, glistening drop hanging from the tip. This is the point of no return. Once the glue is applied, a clock begins to tick. The hide glue will begin to cool and set within minutes, a slow but irreversible process of solidification. There is no room for hesitation or error. Every movement from this moment forward must be calm, deliberate, and correct. The muscles in the hand and arm are consciously relaxed. The brush is brought to the first piece of wood. With a steady hand, the hot glue is applied to the cut surfaces of the tails. The amber liquid soaks into the end grain, turning the pale, freshly cut wood a deep, rich brown. The application is methodical, ensuring an even, thin coat on every mating surface without any excess drips. The motion is smooth and economical. The 4 pieces are brought together. The pins of one board are aligned with the tails of another. The fit is snug, requiring a slight pressure to engage. The two pieces are pushed together by hand, the join closing until the shoulders of the joint meet with a soft, woody sigh. You notice the faint tackiness as the cooling glue begins to take hold, a subtle increase in the friction between the parts. A small, wooden mallet is used to fully seat the joints. The blows are not heavy or forceful, but are delivered with a series of sharp, controlled taps. The sound is a solid, resonant note that changes in pitch as the joint comes fully home. A thin, perfect bead of excess glue is squeezed out along the seam, a visual confirmation of a well-made and well-coated connection. The drawer is now a fragile, three-dimensional rectangle. It is gently lifted and placed on the clamps that lie waiting on the floor. A steel square is used one last time to check the corners. A slight adjustment is made, a gentle push on one corner to bring the assembly into perfect 90-degree alignment. The square is the final arbiter, its judgment absolute. The jaws of the clamps are slowly tightened. The screw handles are turned, the metal groaning with the increasing pressure. The wooden cauls placed between the steel and the delicate timber distribute the force, preventing any bruising. You feel the immense, silent power being exerted, a steady, unyielding pressure that will hold the joints in perfect contact as the glue cures and the wood becomes one. With the clamps secured, the work is done. The hands are withdrawn. There is a profound stillness in the workshop, the frantic energy of the assembly replaced by a quiet sense of finality. The drawer sits in its steel embrace, a thing in transition. All that remains is to wait, to allow the slow, chemical magic of the glue to complete the process that the hands began. The body exhales, a breath held unconsciously during the critical moments. A sense of calm settles over the space. The eye takes in the clamped form, the small beads of squeezed-out glue, the perfect alignment of the corners. There is nothing more to be done. The irreversible action has been taken, and the result is now in the hands of time and temperature. The largest, most perfect plank of the exotic timber now lies upon the workbench. This is the tabletop, the public face of the entire piece, and its surface must be flawless. The process of flattening it has been completed over days, but now it must be brought to a final, glass-like smoothness. This is the ultimate test of the plane, a gauntlet of patience and control where the slightest error will be visible forever. A new tool is selected for this final stage. It is a scraper, a simple rectangle of high-carbon steel, its edges sharpened to create a fine, hook-like burr. It is not a slicing tool, but a shaving one. Held between the thumbs and forefingers, the steel is bowed into a slight curve. The thumbs press forward, pushing the hooked edge across the wood surface. The sound is unlike any other in the workshop. It is a high, sharp whisper, a shearing hiss as the steel edge removes a microscopic layer of wood fiber. The shaving that rises is not a curl of wood, but a fine, almost weightless dust. The scent is of dry, warm timber, released by the friction of the tool. The world outside the workshop ceases to exist. You feel a state of hyper-focus descend. The senses narrow until they are entirely consumed by the small patch of wood directly in front of the scraper. The eyes are not looking at the whole board, but are scanning the surface for the subtlest variations in the grain, for the almost invisible tracks left by the smoothing plane. Every perceived imperfection becomes a target. The feedback loop is immediate and constant. The eyes see a slight ridge in the wood. The mind calculates the precise pressure and angle needed. The hands and thumbs translate this calculation into physical force, pushing the scraper's edge across the spot. The ears hear the change in the shearing sound as the high spot is removed. The fingertips then follow, confirming the new, perfect smoothness. The body becomes an instrument of this process. The breathing is slow and even, the shoulders are relaxed, the stance is balanced. All energy is directed down through the arms and into the fingertips, concentrating it on the thin, sharp edge of the steel. The muscles in the thumbs begin to burn with the sustained pressure, a dull ache that is noted and then ignored. The work is all that matters. Time itself seems to warp and dissolve. The slow crawl of the light from the high window goes unnoticed. The growing chill in the air is not felt. The only reality is the surface of the wood, the whisper of the steel, and the fine, fragrant dust that settles on the back of the hands. The mind is completely silent, empty of all thoughts except the immediate, tactile language of the material. This is the flow state, a place of deep, meditative action. There is no sense of self, no awareness of a worker performing a task. There is only the work itself, unfolding in a seamless, continuous present. The distinction between the hand, the tool, and the wood begins to blur. They are all components in a single, unified system of refinement, a closed circuit of perception and response. The surface is now almost perfect, a field of dark, shimmering wood. Yet, one area resists. A small patch of grain reverses direction, a swirling, interlocking pattern that even the scraper cannot tame without tearing the delicate fibers. This is the final challenge, a point of natural rebellion in the material that requires a different, more dangerous approach. The smoothing plane must be used one last time. The plane is lifted, its weight feeling immense in this moment of heightened tension. The blade, already sharpened to a surgical edge, is given a final caress on the leather strop. The steel is polished until it shines with a cold, absolute light. The blade is then set back into the body of the plane, its projection from the sole adjusted with microscopic precision. It must cut, but barely. The breath is taken and held, stilling the body. The world narrows to this single point of conflict in the wood. The plane is not placed flat upon the surface. Instead, it is angled, skewed sharply, so that the blade will not attack the fibers head-on, but will slice them at an oblique angle. This is a delicate negotiation, a way of tricking the wood into yielding a clean cut. The pressure is applied. It is not a downward force, which would cause the blade to dig in and tear the grain. Instead, the pressure is forward and slightly to the side, a complex vector of intention transmitted from the shoulders, through the arms and into the tool. The muscles in the hands are not tense, but are alive with a kind of active listening, ready to react to the slightest feedback. The forward motion begins. It is impossibly slow. The iron sole of the plane glides over the polished surface of the wood, the movement measured in inches per second. The sound is of silence, the metal sliding over the timber with only the faintest whisper of friction. The eyes are fixed on the point just ahead of the blade's mouth, watching the wood fibers prepare to meet the steel. Then the blade engages. The sound changes. It is not the familiar whisper of a normal cut, but an almost inaudible, high-pitched hiss, like steam escaping from a tiny fissure. It is the sound of a single, continuous wood fiber being severed with surgical precision. A vibration, fine as a tremor, travels from the sole of the plane up into the palms of the hands. A shaving begins to emerge from the mouth of the plane. It is not a ribbon or a curl. It is a filament of wood so thin it is almost transparent. It rises into the still air of the workshop, a fragile, shimmering thread that seems to defy gravity. The light from the window catches it, illuminating its delicate, unbroken structure. This is the evidence of a perfect cut. The plane continues its slow, inexorable journey across the rebellious patch of grain. The pressure from the hands remains absolutely constant, the angle of the tool held without a tremor. The body is locked, a stable platform for this one critical action. The held breath burns in the lungs, but it is not released. To breathe is to risk a microscopic shift, a fatal flaw in the motion. As the plane clears the difficult area, the pressure is eased. The tool is lifted from the surface of the wood in a clean, decisive motion. The forward movement stops. The impossibly thin shaving detaches from the blade and drifts slowly down to rest on the surface of the bench. A profound stillness settles back over the workshop. The breath is finally, slowly, released in a long, silent exhalation. The smoothing plane is placed gently on its side on the workbench, its task complete. The steel of the blade, still warm from the friction of the cut, begins to cool. A deep, resonant silence fills the space, a quiet that feels heavier and more profound than before. The intense, narrow focus of the critical moment recedes, and the awareness of the larger room slowly returns. You feel the tension release from the muscles in the shoulders and back. It is a slow, unwinding sensation, a physical letting go of the immense control required for the final pass. The hands, which a moment ago were instruments of absolute precision, now feel heavy and tired. A faint tremor runs through the fingers, the aftershock of sustained, focused effort. The body remembers the strain the mind had ignored. The eyes lift from the tabletop and rediscover the workshop. The racks of waiting timber, the orderly rows of tools on the wall, the fine layer of dust on the high shelves, they all reappear, swimming back into focus. The sounds of the room also return. The low, steady hiss of the gas lamp, the distant creak of a floorboard upstairs, the almost imperceptible hum of the city outside the thick walls. The hand is brought to the surface of the wood. The fingertips, exquisitely sensitive after the work, glide over the spot where the rebellious grain had been. The surface is now a single, unbroken plane of polished smoothness. It feels cool and solid like stone. There is no hint of imperfection, no whisper of torn fiber. The eye confirms what the hand already knows. The challenge has been met. A deep sense of calm settles in. It is not a feeling of triumph or excitement, but one of quiet, profound satisfaction. The gauntlet has been passed. The internal standard, the unyielding demand for perfection that governs this space, has been satisfied. The work has been proven true. This feeling is a physical warmth that spreads through the chest, a quiet easing of a pressure that was barely perceptible until it was gone. The impossibly thin shaving that was produced by the final cut still lies on the bench. It is picked up with care. It is so light it seems to have no weight at all, a ghost of the wood from which it came. Held up to the lamplight, it is translucent, the intricate pattern of the grain visible within its delicate structure. It is the physical proof of the perfect cut, a fragile testament to a moment of absolute control. The eye follows the sweep of the grain across the entire tabletop. It now flows in an uninterrupted, shimmering river of dark, rich color. The light from the window plays across the surface, revealing the depth and complexity of the wood. The board is no longer a raw material. It has been transformed into a field of pure, ordered beauty. The work of the plane is finished. The body feels the deep ache of fatigue, a weariness earned through hours of unwavering focus. It is a good and honest feeling, the physical price of creation. A simple stool is pulled up to the bench, and for the first time in many hours, the body sits. There is nothing left to do now but to look, to let the eye rest on the finished surface, and allow the quiet rhythm of the room to return. In the clear, unwavering light of a new morning, the finished desk stands in the center of the workshop. It has been moved away from the clutter of the workbench, isolated in the open space to be seen for what it is. The assembly is complete, the clamps are removed, and the final surface has been prepared. It is a moment of profound stillness, the object waiting for its final judgment. The eye begins a slow, methodical inspection. The desk's surface, a single, wide plank of the exotic timber, seems to drink the pale light from the high window. The grain flows like a dark, slow-moving river, the patterns shifting and changing as the viewing angle moves. The finish is not a high gloss, but a deep, satin glow that seems to emanate from within the wood itself, a testament to the patient work with the plane and scraper. A hand is placed flat upon this surface. It is cool to the touch, with a smoothness that feels more like polished stone than organic material. The fingertips glide from one edge to the other without encountering the slightest friction or imperfection. The long, continuous pass is a tactile confirmation of the visual perfection. The surface is a flawless, silent plane of ordered beauty. The inspection moves to the joinery. The eye traces the intricate lines of the dovetails at each corner of the main case. The fit between the pins and tails is so precise that the seam is nearly invisible, a thin, dark line that speaks of a perfect union. You notice there is no sign of filler, no splintered edges, only the sharp, clean geometry of two pieces of wood becoming one. One of the small drawers is pulled open. It does not slide on metal runners, but on wood alone. The movement is smooth and silent, a quiet, hydraulic glide. There is a slight resistance as it is pulled, the result of a fit so exact that the air itself provides a cushion. The drawer stops at its full extension without a tremor, held in place by the precision of its construction. Closing the drawer produces the most satisfying sensation. For the final inch of its travel, a gentle push is required. The air trapped inside the case is compressed, resisting the motion. Then, with a soft, final sigh, the air escapes, and the drawer front settles perfectly flush with the surrounding frame. It is a sound of absolute finality, a pop of suction that is the hallmark of master-level work. The slender, curved legs are examined next. They flow from the corners of the case in a graceful, continuous line, tapering to a delicate point where they meet the floor. Each curve is a perfect echo of the others, shaped by hand and eye with saws and spoke shaves. You feel the smoothness of the curves, a flowing, uninterrupted line with no flat spots or hesitation. They give the heavy desk an impossible sense of lightness. The entire piece is a study in quiet, understated excellence. There is no flashy carving or applied ornamentation. Its beauty comes from its perfect proportions, the stunning figure of the wood, and the visible honesty of its construction. It is an object that does not shout for attention, but rewards close inspection with a deeper and deeper appreciation of the skill involved in its creation. The old, ornamental mallet is taken down from its high shelf. The beautiful, unused tool, the silent standard of the workshop. It is not used to strike anything. Instead, it is placed gently on the very center of the desk's surface. The dark, polished fruitwood of the mallet seems to find a home on the dark, polished timber of the desk. The two objects, one a symbol of the standard, the other its fulfillment, rest together in the quiet light. A hand is run one last time over the smooth corner where the side and the top meet. The transition is seamless. This single, silent gesture is the only confirmation needed. It is a tactile acknowledgement that the work is not just good, but that it is true. It meets the unspoken, unyielding standard of the workshop. The reward is not applause, but the simple, undeniable existence of the object itself. The desk stands complete, a silent testament to the code of patience and endurance. It has absorbed hundreds of hours of focused labor, transforming a difficult and rebellious material into a thing of serene and ordered grace. It feels as though it has always been there, a permanent and stable presence in the center of the room. The work is done. The boon has been realized. The light from the window begins to change as the day progresses, and the character of the wood seems to shift with it. What was a dark, brooding river of grain in the morning becomes a warm, glowing field of amber and chocolate in the afternoon. The desk is not a static object. It is alive, interacting with the light, its beauty unfolding slowly over time. The final inspection is not an end, but a beginning. With the final inspection complete, a profound shift occurs in the atmosphere of the workshop. The intense, focused energy that has filled the space for weeks begins to dissipate, replaced by a deep and pervasive calm. The commission, once a source of immense pressure, now stands as a finished fact, a silent, solid presence that no longer demands anything. The work is truly over. The leather apron, stiff with dried glue and coated in fine dust, is untied. Its weight is lifted from the shoulders, and the release is a palpable physical sensation. The garment is hung on its hook, a silent partner in the long labor now retired. You feel the simple cotton of the shirt beneath, a soft and yielding texture against the skin after the stiff, protective leather. The hands are submerged in a basin of warm water. The warmth is a luxury, a stark contrast to the cold, bracing water of the working day. A bar of soft soap is worked into a thick lather, and the grime and dust of the exotic timber are slowly washed away. The scent is clean and simple, a gentle perfume of lavender that cuts through the heavy, organic smells of the workshop. You notice the state of the hands as they emerge from the water. The skin is calloused and etched with fine lines, the knuckles are raw, and there are small, healed cuts on the fingertips. They are the hands of a maker, a physical record of the struggle with the material. To see them clean, resting against the pale ceramic of the basin, is to see the evidence of the journey. A clean, linen cloth is taken from a small chest. It is soft and has the faint, dry scent of having been stored with cedar. A small tin of beeswax polish is opened. The wax is a pale, creamy yellow, and its fragrance is a sweet, gentle honey that fills the air. A small amount of the polish is worked into the cloth, the warmth of the hands softening it to a smooth paste. The cloth is brought to the surface of the finished desk. The first stroke is an act of gentle anointment. The wax is applied in a slow, circular motion, the soft linen gliding over the impossibly smooth wood. There is no sound, only the quiet whisper of cloth on timber. The wax is not a coating, but a nourishment, something for the wood to absorb. As the polish is worked into the grain, a remarkable transformation occurs. The wood, already beautiful, deepens in color and richness. The intricate patterns of the grain gain a new, three-dimensional quality, a shimmering depth that seems to move and shift under the light. The scent of warm beeswax now envelops the desk, a final layer of sensory richness. This is not a task, but a reward. A simple meal is prepared. A fresh loaf of bread, still warm from the baker's oven, is broken by hand. A piece of soft, white cheese and a ripe, red apple complete the feast. The food is placed not on the workbench, but on the corner of the newly polished desk. This is the first time the object has been used, its purpose fulfilled in this simple, quiet act. The taste of the food is extraordinary. The crisp skin of the apple, the soft crumb of the bread, the mild saltiness of the cheese, each flavor is clean and distinct. After weeks of simple, functional sustenance, this meal is an indulgence, a reawakening of the senses. You feel the deep, honest hunger in the body, a hunger that comes only after long and difficult work is completed. With the meal finished, a simple wooden chair is drawn up before the desk. The body sinks into it, the muscles finally allowed to rest completely. The eye is free to simply observe, to appreciate the finished form without the critical lens of the maker. The desk is no longer a collection of challenges and technical problems. It is a single, unified object of quiet and enduring beauty. The silence of the workshop returns, but it is a different kind of silence. It is not the quiet of intense concentration, but the deep, peaceful silence of completion. The tools hang dormant on the wall, their work done. The scraps of wood have been cleared away. There is nothing left to do. This moment of pure, uncluttered stillness is the ultimate release. The philosophy of this world is not found in books, but is built into the very fabric of the city. It is a philosophy of endurance, visible in the heavy stone foundations of the buildings and the thick, load-bearing walls of brick. The structures are designed not for fleeting beauty, but for a permanence that defies the seasons and the slow, grinding passage of the years. Hardship is not an enemy to be defeated, but a constant condition to be withstood. This principle is seen in the public works. The massive iron bridges that span the river are monuments to over-engineering. Their huge rivets and thick, cross-braced girders speak of a deep-seated belief in strength and redundancy. The design is not elegant, but it is honest about its purpose: to bear immense loads, to resist the constant corrosive damp, and to stand for centuries. The primary virtue is resilience. In the workshop, this philosophy is reflected in the tools. They are not light or disposable. The body of a hand plane is cast from thick, heavy iron, designed to absorb vibration and remain stable through a lifetime of use. The handles are of dense, resilient rosewood. You feel this commitment to durability in the sheer mass of the objects. They were made with the expectation of being passed down through generations. The joinery itself is a testament to this belief. A mortise and tenon joint, when properly made, is stronger than the wood around it. The dovetail does not rely on the transient strength of glue, but on the interlocking geometry of the wood itself. These are techniques developed to combat the inevitable forces of time, humidity, and use. The goal is to create an object that will hold itself together against all odds. This endurance is a daily, personal practice. It is visible in the slow, methodical rhythm of the work. There is no frantic rush to finish. The understanding is that quality takes time, and that the time it takes is simply the price of permanence. You notice this in the patient sharpening of a blade, the careful layout of a joint, the slow building up of a finish. Haste is the enemy of longevity. Hardship, like the rebellious knot in a plank of wood, is met not with anger, but with a change in strategy and an application of persistent, focused effort. The problem is not seen as a personal failure, but as an inherent property of the material world. The response is to adapt, to work around the obstacle, to apply skill and patience until the difficulty is overcome. It is a quiet, uncomplaining resilience. You see this philosophy in the simple, repetitive act of maintenance. The oiling of a tool to prevent rust, the sweeping of the floor to prevent clutter, the careful storage of lumber to prevent warping. These are not exciting tasks, but they are the bedrock of the craft. They are a constant, low-level effort to hold back the natural forces of decay and disorder. Endurance is a daily habit. The architecture of the furniture itself embodies this. The legs of a table are thick and sturdy. The case of a cabinet is constructed with a solid, unyielding frame. There is a weight and a presence to the pieces that speaks of their intention to last. Form is important, but it is always secondary to the primary function of strength and durability. The beauty must be built upon a foundation of absolute stability. This mindset extends beyond the physical. It is a form of mental and emotional endurance. It is the ability to face a complex and daunting task, like the intricate commission, and to break it down into a series of small, manageable steps. It is the capacity to work for long hours in solitude, fueled by an internal commitment to a standard of excellence. You feel this philosophy in the very silence of the workshop. It is the quiet of a place that has weathered decades, its walls saturated with the history of slow, patient work. It is a silence that says that storms will pass, that difficulties will be overcome, and that what is well made will endure. The world outside may be chaotic and uncertain, but within these walls, the simple, powerful logic of endurance reigns supreme. Even the sustenance reflects this. The dark, heavy bread and the hard, salty cheese are foods of substance, designed to provide slow-burning energy for a long day of physical labor. They are not foods of fleeting pleasure, but of reliable, steadfast fuel. Like everything else in this world, they are built to last, to provide the strength needed to continue the work. Ultimately, this philosophy is an acceptance of reality. It acknowledges that materials are imperfect, that time is a destructive force, and that challenges are inevitable. But instead of despairing, it answers with skill, with patience, and with an unwavering commitment to building things that will stand firm against the tide. It is a quiet, powerful belief in the virtue of making things that last. Time does not announce its passage with calendars or clocks in the workshop. It records itself in the slow, inexorable wear of wood and steel and bone. The passage of years is a gradual thinning, a slow erasure. The sharp, crisp corners of the workbench have become rounded and soft, worn down by the friction of countless arms and the sides of countless planks of timber. The tools themselves tell this story. The blade of the favorite smoothing plane, once a thick rectangle of laminated steel, is now a slender, delicate sliver. Decades of sharpening, of grinding the edge against the oilstone to restore its keenness, have worn the metal away, particle by microscopic particle. It is a physical manifestation of a lifetime of work, an object consumed by its own purpose. You notice the handles of the chisels have changed. The fine, octagonal facets of the boxwood are almost gone, the wood worn into a smooth, organic shape that perfectly matches the contours of the hand. The maker's mark, once stamped deep into the wood, is now a faint, illegible ghost. The handle and the hand have shaped each other over the course of a long and silent partnership. The body, too, keeps its own quiet record. The fingers, once nimble and strong, begin to stiffen in the cold morning air. A dull, persistent ache settles into the joints of the knuckles and the wrist, a low thrumming that never fully disappears. The fine, delicate work of inlay, which once required only a steady hand, now demands a new level of intense, willed concentration to overcome a slight, occasional tremor. The eyes, which could once discern the faintest pencil line in the dim light, now require the bright, focused pool of the gas lamp, even in the middle of the day. You feel the strain of focusing on the fine details of a dovetail layout, the need to bring the work closer to the face. The world of the workshop, once sharp and clear, has begun to soften at the edges. The heavy lifting becomes a more deliberate, calculated affair. A thick plank of oak, once lifted with a single, fluid motion, now requires a moment of preparation. The stance must be correct, the back straight, the breath taken and held. The effort is no longer a simple matter of strength, but a careful negotiation with the body's new limits. Each lift is a reminder of a slow, quiet fading. The rhythm of the work begins to slow. The long, unbroken hours of intense focus become shorter, punctuated by more frequent pauses. A simple stool is pulled up to the bench more often, not for rest, but for a moment to gather the energy to continue. The internal fire of urgency has banked, replaced by the steady, patient glow of a lifetime of habit. There comes a day when the sharpening of the plain iron takes longer than the work it is meant to perform. The hands struggle to hold the blade at a consistent angle on the stone. The resulting edge, when inspected against the light, is no longer the perfect, unwavering line it once was. The tool is ready, but the body that wields it can no longer command its old precision. The great saws hang on the wall, their teeth still sharp, but their weight now feels prohibitive. The small, fine-toothed dovetail saw becomes the tool of choice for almost every task, its lighter mass more manageable. The scale of the work begins to shrink, the grand commissions of the past replaced by smaller, less demanding projects. The ambition of the work fades with the body's strength. One morning, the heavy bar is lifted from the workshop door, but no new timber is brought in. The day is spent not in creation, but in a slow, final act of maintenance. The tools are cleaned with a meticulous, almost reverent care. A thick coat of protective wax is applied to the cast iron surfaces of the planes to ward off the damp. Each tool is put away, its edge keen, its purpose fulfilled. The workshop is swept clean one last time. The familiar scent of fresh-cut wood is absent, replaced by the clean, sharp smell of oil and wax and cool, undisturbed air. The space is returned to a state of perfect, silent order. It is not an act of abandonment, but of completion. It is a quiet acknowledgement that the hands can no longer meet the unyielding standard of the work. The gas lamp is extinguished, plunging the room into the soft, gray light of the late afternoon. The tools hang in their perfect rows, the workbench stands clear and empty, the floor is swept of all shavings. The long day is finally over. The silence that settles is not the silence of waiting, but the profound, peaceful silence of a story that has reached its natural and quiet end. An immeasurable time has passed. The workshop is gone, the city has changed beyond recognition, and the hands that performed the work have long since returned to dust. But the desk remains. It rests now in a large, quiet room with high ceilings and cool, stone floors. The air is still and filtered, free of the dust and grime of the world. The light is soft and indirect, falling gently from above. The desk stands alone on a raised platform, a silent island in the center of the vast space. There are no other objects nearby to distract the eye. It is protected from the touch of hands by a thin, almost invisible cord. It is no longer a functional piece of furniture, but a revered object, a vessel of a time and a discipline that have long since vanished. The surface of the desk still holds its deep, satin glow. The exotic timber has darkened with age to the color of rich, dark earth. The grain, once a flowing river, now seems like a geological map, its patterns holding the slow, silent history of the centuries. You notice the light still plays across the surface, revealing a depth that seems to go on forever. The joinery is the most remarkable thing. The fine, dark lines of the dovetails are still perfect, the seams tight and unyielding after hundreds of years of seasonal change. The wood has expanded and contracted with the humidity of 1,000 seasons, but the interlocking geometry has held it true. The joints are a silent testament to a philosophy of permanence, a quiet victory over the forces of time. A single drawer is propped open by a small, clear block, allowing a view into its construction. The same precision is visible on the inside, in the places no one was ever meant to see. The clean, sharp lines of the interior joints, the smooth, planed surface of the drawer bottoms. The integrity of the work is absolute, extending even to the hidden spaces. You feel the stillness of the room. It is a profound and heavy silence, the kind found only in places dedicated to the preservation of the past. The distant, muffled sound of footsteps on the stone floor is the only intrusion, a reminder that the world outside still moves. But here, in the presence of the desk, time itself seems to have stopped. The object radiates a quiet, palpable energy. It is the stored energy of 1,000 hours of focused, patient labor. The memory of the plane's whisper, the tap of the mallet, the intense concentration of the final, critical pass-all of it seems to be held deep within the wood. The desk is not an empty shell. It is a container of a life's work, a silent echo of a vanished world. The slender, curved legs still give the piece its impossible lightness. They stand firm on the platform, their delicate points meeting the surface with a quiet grace. They have borne the weight of the heavy case for centuries without sagging or splitting. Their strength, born of a perfect understanding of the wood's grain, has endured. The polish, the final act of anointment, is long gone. The surface is now dry and cool, a simple, honest expression of the wood itself. And yet the desk's beauty has not faded. It has matured. The small, inevitable marks of use, a faint scratch here, a dark ring there, have been absorbed into its history, becoming part of its story. It is not perfect in spite of these marks, but because of them. There is no memory of the maker's name. No documents record the commission or the long weeks of labor. All that is lost. The only thing that remains is the object itself, a silent, anonymous testament to a standard of excellence. The desk speaks its own story in the language of tight joints, smooth surfaces, and perfect proportions. In the deep quiet of the great room, the desk simply rests. It is safe from the damp, the dust, and the chaos of the world. It has fulfilled its purpose, not just as a piece of furniture, but as an idea. It is the physical manifestation of endurance, of patience, of the profound and lasting beauty that can be achieved when a skilled hand and a focused mind meet a worthy material. The light in the room begins to fade as the day ends. The desk is slowly enveloped by shadows, its sharp lines softening into a dark, solid silhouette. It does not feel abandoned in the darkness. It feels at peace. It has done its work. It has endured. And in the cool, silent dark of the empty room, it will continue to stand, a perfect and eternal echo. The noise of the era fades. The hiss of the gas lamp, the scrape of the plane, and the distant rumble of the city dissolve into the quiet stream of time. The struggle with the material, the immense weight of the work, and the deep endurance of the body all settle and are still. The silence returns, heavier and deeper than it was before. The name of the cabinetmaker is lost, forgotten like a single shaving of wood swept from the floorboards. But the foundation of the craft remains. The wood still holds its perfect, polished form. The precise joinery still holds its silent, powerful tension against the passing of the years. The object itself endures, a quiet testament to a forgotten patience and a silent standard of excellence. The images of the past slowly recede, folding back into the familiar shadows of the room. The workbench, the tools, and the soft light from the high window dissolve into the darkness. There is no more journey to be taken tonight. There is only the stillness of the present moment and the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the breath, a quiet and natural anchor. You feel the simple weight of the body, the gentle contact with the soft surface below. The story is now finished. The work is complete. The night is safe, and the silence that fills the space is absolute and deep. There is nothing left to do but rest, and to let the quiet carry the mind into a peaceful and restorative sleep.